Welcome to Outta the Box, where I, Sean-William Dawson, artist extraordinaire, make works of art out of stuff that you guys send me. Sight unseen. I have no idea what I'm going to be getting. Now, in this case, I'm not taking it out of a box because this one's from one of my best friends, Dan Allen, and he actually just gave it to me in a bag, right? So, I have not seen them, though. That's an important thing. So, for this series, what I've been doing is I've been asking people to send me a two-dimensional item, three-dimensional item, and an image of some sort. So, let's see what I got. So right now, my two-dimensional item is a floor sample of some sort. I'm actually more interested right off the bat with the backing of it, because the backing has some text. Beckham Brothers. I don't know. I also sort of like the patina, like that used wood that's on that used wood look. That's weathered and used look. That really appeals to me in my own work of art. So that's a good item to start off with. Now I asked for the image. Oh, well, this is cool. We got an image of Bruce Lee on the one side, and also I got an image of an ad for muscle building stuff that I do not use. I've never have. I know it's hard to tell. But anyway, so there's the picture of Bruce Lee. I think it's great. Bruce Lee, such a strong guy. I'm also liking the connection of the wood and the martial arts. I always think of them chopping the boards, so I don't know if that could come into play in the work of art. Not sure yet. We'll see what happens. And the three-dimensional item is he actually sent me two. One thing is half a cast of a human skull, which is very interesting. Right? I think it's all coming. This is going to be a good work of art. I'm sensing battling and just, I don't know, strength. Who knows? And the other thing he sent me was a good old-fashioned shot glass. So, we'll see I don't know where we're going to go with it, but let's see what I can do. All right, so what we're watching now is me starting to prep the surface. Believe it or not, all the hardest work has already been done, and that's the thinking of what to do with the materials. Now, even though I am recognized for using unconventional materials and reclaimed objects, there are always things that I find interesting. So this project is quite different because I really have no say in what the objects are, right? So the hardest part actually is conceiving what these items mean and how they interact with each other and what I can do to produce a solid work of art. It does not reflect on the person that sent me the pieces. And actually it's me taking the things and reflecting on how they sort of function or what they mean in society, right? So what we're watching right now is me actually building the surface, right? Now, saying that I work with reclaimed materials doesn't just mean like instead of canvas, I use things like bedsheets and pillowcases, right? Instead of regular paper, I use wallpaper. And I get all these things from secondhand stores or garage sales. And I deal with pop culture imagery, right? I feel that art has a job and function in the world, and its job is to represent time and place. And my whole theory is that if I want to represent my time and place, then I'm better to use objects from my time and place. In my opinion, canvas, you don't know, the canvas could be from today, it could be from 1,000 years ago. You don't know, right? And so like with a bedsheet or a pillowcase or wallpaper, you can sort of guess what decade it's from. So that's why I like to use these materials. I also grew up in Generation X, where we were taught, one of the first generations, we were taught to be green and environmental and recycle, and in my case, upcycle, right? So with the construction of this stuff, I even use reclaimed wood when I build all my stretchers, right? And when I build these stretchers, so when I figure out what item I'm going to use, if I'm going to use wallpaper, that's fine. If I need to bolt something to the work, I usually build a frame or a stretcher. And then what I do is I stretch the bed sheet on it, and then I can bolt things to it. It's got more stability, it's stronger. So in this case, I decided I want to use a bed sheet, And so I'm building the stretcher. I ripped down the 2x4s, and all the 2x4s and all the wood is all reclaimed, like I said. And I usually get them from places like construction bins or scrap bins and whatnot, or sides of roads, right? It just depends. I just find the wood and I reuse it, all right? So I mentioned gesso, and what gesso is, and there is a stage in this process where you see me using white paint, and I brush it all on the side of the frame, and I brush it on top of the whiteboard too. That's a sealer, and it seals the surface so you can paint on it. If not, the surfaces will absorb the paint, and we don't want to have that. Also, canvas's natural color is actually tanned, and most people think of canvas as white, and that's because the canvases that most people buy are pre-gessoed, right? They already have the gesso and the sealer on there, okay? So I gesso it. As you can see, I've gessoed the sides of the frame. And then what I do too is I then use something called GAC 100, and it's an adhesive. It's also a primer, and it's clear, but that is how I mount the bed sheets and that to the actual surface, right? So I put a coat of the GAC 100 on there, I smooth out the bed sheet, and then what I do is I actually go over with another coat of GAC 100 and actually adhere it right to the board. A lot of people think when they don't even realize that it's a bed sheet that I've stretched on there, because it's so flat, it's solid, and it's only when they flip it around and they see the back of it that's they can get the idea like, oh, it's an actual bed sheet. And so yeah, you'll also see me at one point stapling. I'll staple the back of the surface, or back of the structure. That's where I wrap around the bed sheet and I stretch it just like I would a canvas and clean up the edges, right? All right, now, one of my favorite spots in the entire world, entire planet, is right behind me here. And there's a lot of shots of it over the shoulder. I have one from the sides, and that's my drawing table. As you can see, that's what's behind me here, and I have all this stuff behind me. And those are my inspiration shelves. They're items from when I was growing up. They're items that my kids gave me. Some students have given me over the years. I got my skateboards, I got my baseball cards, I got all stuff that I find that really inspire me in life. And I have them here at my drawing table. So throughout all the videos, I'm always going to show glimpses of my stuff because I think it's cool and I like to show it off. But this is my happy zone, my drafting table. It's an old 1950s drafting table that I have. And it pivots up and down, but I just keep it flat. I do all my work here. So right now, you'll see that I am actually working on film. I don't mean just for the camera. I mean, I'm actually drawing on film. What I like to do is I use a brush and ink. And I draw the picture on film. And that's because, two reasons. One, I can then take this and project it up onto my surface and work with it that way, which you'll see in a second. And also, I actually do a lot of silk screening. And with it being on film, I can then take that drawing, burn it into a silk screen, and do print editions, which I will actually be doing with the Bruce Lee image from this video. So watch for those, because soon those prints will be up for sale on my website. I love working with ink on film. I love cross-hatching. I grew up wanting to be a comic book artist, and one of my favorite artists is a guy named Todd McFarlane, and his line work and whatnot is just some of the best stuff I've ever seen. And so that's why my work has a heavily illustrated look to it, because I'm illustrating. I love illustration. Thought I was going to be an illustrator my whole life. Actually, when I was a kid. And when I worked hard at it, and by the time I was 19, I ended up having 2 children's books published that I'd illustrated. And I decided after doing those, I didn't want to do that for a living. But I still have that influence of the illustration, right? I love that look. So I'm doing a lot of cross-hatching, and that's what you see when I'm doing all the work with the brush and ink, and you see the line work. That's called cross-hatching. In fact, if anybody is interested in learning my drawing techniques, you can always check out my Udemy page. I will put a link to the Udemy page at the end of the video. All right, so now we're going to take a look at how I'm projecting the image of Bruce Lee up onto the surface. And here I am doing the white gesso. This gives it a flat, it gives me a good base to start with. All right, and I always love, and if you notice in this video, when I brush the white gesso on, you will see that the image starts to appear more. I always think it's cool. It's like a magic trick that I'm doing. And once I have the white gesso on, I actually put a layer of tinted gesso, and I tint it pink, right? Like a peach color. And the reason being is that I'm going to be using a water-soluble graphite. And that is pencils that I draw with and then use a brush and water and brush it in. So it acts like watercolor. So I get what's called the gray scale, a tonal scale. And that plays really well with that peach color. There's something in color theory that says these things work well, like pinks and grays, right? So that's why I like to use that ground. And so you'll see it on the Bruce Lee side and on the side, what I'm calling my Muscle Man side. Now, even though this Muscle Man image didn't come in the package that I received, there was an image of the Muscle Man on the back side of the Bruce Lee picture, and I didn't want to use that picture. I found it inspirational. I thought this was a neat juxtaposition of these two figures, but the images were too similar. And I wanted to have it where, just for composition's sake, where they were almost looking like they were facing each other in the piece. So I just went and sourced out a different picture of a Muscle Man. And this one's actually from the 1960s, I think. And I worked with it. So even though it didn't come in the package, it was still inspired by what was in the package. All right? So you'll see me working on my Muscle Man. And once again, I use the white gesso. I put the pink gesso on. And then what I do is I actually do like an outline. I take my pencil, and the pencil I use used to be my grandfather's pencil. He was a draftsman. It's the pencil that I use to this day. And I do the outline of it when I project it, and then I turn the projector off, and that is when I start working with the graphite, water-soluble graphite and the water, and I brush it all in. Ow now, brown cow. Ow now, brown cow. Ow now, brown cow. Now we're into the final stages. I have my images drawn. They are on there. They are done with the water soluble. I am happy with them. And the last thing I like to do to all my work is apply the objects. I never, ever, ever apply the objects and work around them. All right, I like to put the objects. If it's an image, I'll tape it up sometimes. That's what I actually do in episode number 2. You'll have to come back and check that out. I'll tape them just to get the position right, and so I also know where to draw the drawing. But I don't do all the bolting or anything until the very end. It's superstition. I have my ways of working, and this is a method that's worked, right? So why fix something that's not broke? So the one thing I started with was bolting down the brothers board. I call it the brothers board. And I had to put the shot glass on there, right? The 1 ounce shot glass. And you'll notice that I painted on the shot glass too, but I'm not going to tell you why until the reveal at the end. All right, and I'll explain that in the reveal. I have to put the skull on there, and I thought to make it a little shelf. And so what I did was I actually took an old book that I had and made the shelf out of the book. So you can see I put brackets on there, bolt the brackets to the book, and then I bolt the book with the brackets to the work of art. Now here you see that I'm mixing something, there's a black and white and then it turns gray. This is actually epoxy. This is a very, very, very strong glue. And I'm going to use it to glue down the shot glass to the work of art. And I'm going to use it to glue the skull to the bookshelf. It's not really a bookshelf. It's a shelf made out of a book. And that way it just stays there. I don't have to worry about it falling. And if I would have tried to screw down the shot glass to the work of art, I would have cracked the glass. It would have broke, and I didn't want to do that. So I just adhered it with epoxy. All right. Here's the part that everyone's waiting for, the big unveiling. So let's stop and we'll check it out. So with this piece, the overall theme that I sort of went with was how even though things can be the same in one scene, say maybe working out, or I use the analogy of snowboarders and skiers, even though you're sort of in the same genre, how there can be opposing sides. And in this case, I did someone that's known for karate and it does it for athleticism, like they do to master an art. whereas the other side was more about bodybuilding, about physical appearance. But I think they're in the same wheelhouse, if you will. And I think what I was going for was the idea that, you know what? It doesn't matter if you're a bodybuilder or someone into, you know, jiu-jitsu or karate. It doesn't matter if you're a snowboarder and a skier. You're still trying to enjoy the same area or the same thing. You still get that same feeling from it. And so why not try to get along with it, right? As opposed to butting heads and looking down on one side compared to the other. The biggest thing I think for me in this piece, not just the drawings, is the board that's in between, the Beckham brothers. As you know, what I did was I actually ended up using the reverse side of it, and I love the idea of Beckham brothers, because also to me, the board itself is very symbolic of a bridge that any scene, two opposing sides in one scene need to build, right? There is commonalities there, and we are walking sort of the same path. Maybe it's in different directions, but there's a bridge there that needs to be utilized. Now, the skull on the book, to me, that's very representative of, you know, getting to know each side of this bridge, getting to know the other side, the yin to your yang, if you will, and doing it before it's too late. You know, like, we're all just human beings on this planet. And I get so tired of hate between people. I really do. Especially if you're into the same type of things, there can be something there. People can heal. People can do something. You know, and the shot glass, the last thing on there is, it's kind of cheeky, but it's like, why not take a shot at this type of approach towards life? Build those bridges. You know, maybe it doesn't even need to be in the same scene, but that's where you can start. You know, maybe you guys don't need to be in the same type of world. But if you do try to build that bridge with somebody in that same world as you that's on the opposing side, then those building bridges becomes part of your tool belt. It becomes part of your dialogue. It becomes part of your personality. And that's what we should focus on. Now, I don't know if everyone knows this, but I name all my pieces after either songs or albums. And this one I'm naming after one of my most influential albums I've ever had in my entire life. And that is Unknown Road by the band Pennywise. Because I think that sometimes people, when they're on opposing sides within the same scene, they're afraid to explore that unknown road. And maybe they should, you know. With that, I say thank you for watching this episode, and please come back and join me when we can check out together what comes out of the box. All the incredible music that you've been hearing throughout this episode, and in fact, throughout the entire season this year, is brought to you by the wonderful artists and people at Tarantula Tapes. Please check out their Bandcamp page so you can grab any of the awesome music that's on it.